Today's segment of Valley Percussion Festival Summer Series, Episode 3, is definitely one that I have been looking forward to, guys. I cannot, you know, fully express how excited I am about today. Um, First of all, as musicians, as percussionists, and particularly as percussionists or drummers, right? Some of us like to, play a wide variety of percussion instruments, right? Hence, percussionists. Some of us like to play the drum, maybe snare drum, right? Some of us like to play tenor drums. Some of us like to play drum set. And I guess the term there appropriate is drummer, right? For the modality that we enjoy playing. But one thing that is common amongst the drummers and percussionists is that we like to really polish our craft. We like to be the very best that can be. And sometimes, and it's totally okay. Sometimes we really want to be the best, right? We really want to be the best at what we do. And uh, we always are striving, right, to learn the next best thing, the next best technique, the next best approach, the next best lick, right? We're always trying to be better because we want to be the best that we can be, right? And hence why I am so excited. I am so excited about today's clinic, because today's clinic can directly help you with that, in being the very best that you can be. And the clinic topic, touch in percussion, as far as the touch that we play with, not physically touching, right? So that topic to me is very exciting. Now, the one thing that makes it even more exciting is the person that is going to be introducing this subject to us. Um, Knowledgeable to the infinity degree, uh, practical, uh, as a performer. Oh my gosh! Like, my friends, you're in for a treat if you have not experienced Norman Weinberg. Hello,
My
how are
gosh,
you doing,
Gilbert,
sir?
I think I'm in love. I that introduction was ridiculous, uh, but thank you so much. Oh my God, I don't know what to say
I
except
think I honestly think I fell short, sir. Like
oh
I
gosh,
missed a
no.
few notches.
And please, call me Norm instead of Sir or Norman, or Your Highness will work.
Your
Uh,
Highness is most appropriate.
um, and I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity, asking me to do this, because uh, I've been thinking about these things for a long time throughout most of my career. And uh, I think that over the course of the last 15, 20, 25 years, it's kind of been ruminating in the back of my head, and I'm kind of becoming more and more conscious of the whole thing. And this offering this clinic to you and your viewers at the Valley Percussion Festival has really just given me the opportunity to even hone in tighter on my
Wow.
thoughts and try to be able to express them more clearly. Uh, and so that's been a big plus for me. Uh, I'm not going to say it's perfected, because two things: one, nothing is ever perfected, and
Yes.
two, um, I don't have all of the answers, and uh, to even think that I have all of the answers is ridiculous.
I, I,
uh,
I I think that's what makes music interesting. I remember a line my college professor shared with me. He goes, personally, Gilbert, the more that I learn, uh, the more I realize how little I know. And the more I acquire knowledge, the smaller my knowledge base gets.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. I agree with that sentiment 100%. Um, yeah, absolutely. There, in the business world, there in leadership business world, like if you're a manager or a CEO or something like that, there are so many books being written about leadership and management and how to work with a team and all that kind of stuff, that there's even a company that will sell management books, kind of like the Cliff Notes version of management books. There are so many coming out every month, you can't read them all. So this company will condense them for you and send you like the 10 best books on management for that particular month, and you pay them for this service, which has always made me think that nobody knows what the hell they're doing. Because if anybody really knew what they were doing, there would be one book. It would be, this is the way to manage a team, or this is the way to manage a company. And there wouldn't be need for all of these books. So people just find the way it works for them, and then they try to write a book about
Yes,
it.
yes.
Nobody's got the answers.
It's
Everybody is
it's
searching.
it's like that movie called Vantage Point. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
No.
With well, that movie, it's the first scenes, yeah, the first part of the plot, plays, right, but then you see the same thing from
Ah,
another perspective, because it's
different
called
viewpoint.
Vantage Point. And
Yeah.
then you see the same thing from another person's perspective, and you're seeing the same thing, but it's being portrayed by or seen through the eyes of a different character. And the movie's not boring at all. On the
Yeah.
contrary, it makes it intriguing. And that's the same thing. One thing, one event, one I'm sorry, I'm trying to get my camera correct here.
Uh,
One main topic, addressed by different people. And one of it's not a one size fits all. It's
no,
one of those is going to be okay for me.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody's searching, and I'm definitely going to have to check out that movie. It sounds fascinating.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I'm sure it's yes. You won't regret seeing it. It's a very good movie.
Well,
Uh,
thanks for the turn on.
well, sir, what can we expect in your clinic today? If you can give us a summary.
Um, so I guess in a nutshell, the summary of what I'm going to try to speak about today is um, how to how to take what we think of as music when we see a piece of paper, which isn't music. It's the uh, symbolism for what music might be, because it's not music until you hear it. And then how to take those little black spots on the page and turn them into something that you can communicate to other people. Uh, Very similar in the way that uh, if you're reading a book, if it's prose, then it doesn't really become a story until you read it. Otherwise, it's just a physical thing, right? If you're reading a poem, it doesn't become a poem until you interpret it.
Yes.
Poetry and prose are kind of different in that way. Um, you just told me about a film, but it's not the same thing as seeing the film, because I don't get, in your explanation of it, I didn't get the lighting, I didn't get the costumes, I didn't get the scenery in the background, I didn't get when the music might have an effect on things, I didn't get when the camera is going to pan up, which all have an effect on the communication of that idea to the movie. So using those as kind of basic analogies, I have some ideas on
Yes.
how someone uh, might take the spots on the page and actually turn them into music.
Wow, that's what gives what makes me really excited about your clinic today, sir. It's because that right there, what you're gonna cover, is the core of what can make you, you as a musician.
Yeah,
Will
I
bring
hope
you,
so.
what will bring you as a person out. What will make what'll it's gonna be your stamp whenever you play. That's Norman playing. That's Gilbert. That's, you know, XYZ person, right? And that's what we are looking for. So, I know, uh, guys, you're in for a treat. You're in for some amazing playing and some explanations. Well, world class
Thank you.
percussion education, world class. Well, sir, I'm gonna exit stage left, and
Okay.
eager to have you here, sir.
Well,
Thank you so
thank you.
much.
Please, I know we had kind of set this up beforehand as far as how it all is going to work, and you're going to exit and stuff like that and turn off your microphone. But if you have anything to add, if any of the people watching now have any questions or comments or anything, please just jump in and contribute, because I'm I think I enjoy things the most when I'm not just going one direction, when I'm
Yeah,
getting feedback the other direction too. So uh, feel free to do that at any time.
awesome, 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 awesome.
Cool.
Well, sir, it's all yours.
Here we go. Okay. Well, again, thank you to Gilbert and to all of the sponsors that helped make this possible. Uh, the first thing I want to say, which I hinted at just a little bit, is that I don't have all the answers. I don't think anybody has all the answers. But I have to also temper that by saying that through luck or through some type of fortune or through hard work and perseverance, I've had a pretty good career using these kind of ideas. And it's been successful with my students too. Um, I've got students around the country who are doing things from playing in rock bands to playing Broadway shows to teaching at university level to freelancing in their cities. To some people wear multiple hats, composing, writing, et cetera, et cetera. So while these ideas aren't gospel, they have worked for me. So okay, here we go. So I've made kind of a almost a word for word presentation of this, and so at times I'm going to kind of be looking up here at my screen so that I can read things and remind myself of things. But so first of all, the topic of my presentation today is just touch. And whenever I hear a great player, I think, oh my gosh, they've got an amazing touch. She's got such a great touch and feel for the music. And we kind of think of touch since we play with our hands, whether we're using sticks or whether we're not using sticks, playing congas or bongos or frame drums or anything else. We talk about a player's touch. And so, what does touch really mean? What does touch mean to you when you hear somebody and you exclaim, wow, they've got an amazing touch? So I wrote to some people, and I want to just read you what some of them said, because they say things much more clearly and eloquently than I can about that. I think one of my favorites comes from Bob Becker, who's an amazing percussionist, one of the founding members of Nexus. And if you're not familiar with Bob Becker, look him up on the net. He is an amazingly brilliant human being. His definition of touch was very short, sweet, and to the point. Think of every stroke, loud or soft, big or small, as impacting a living thing. That's pretty heavy. Peter Erskine wrote, when it comes to percussion, touch has everything in the world to do with tone. A hard or brittle touch will result in a hard and brittle sound. A touch that allows the stick or mallet to breathe and the surface of the instrument to sing will produce a musical tone. This is true for the timpanist, marimba, triangle, ride cymbal, or tom-tom. The word that most comes to mind in terms of musical association with touch after much time, after tone, is legato. The musical soul seeks notes, utterances, and sounds that connect to one another. I think that idea is important. Evelyn Glennie, most people know Evelyn Glennie, but if you don't, check out Evelyn Glennie. The sense of touch can be the most profound sense of connection that we have to our world. For musicians, touch is the glue to our sound story. It is the bridge that defines us as sound creators. Touch is a form of listening internally, our bodies becoming a huge ear, transforming what is within outwards. Whether we touch another human, an animal, a flower, or a musical instrument, it generates emotions that light up all the wonders and appreciation toward our skills to paint sound onto our performance canvas. And I'll read just one more. This one actually from one of my former students, Kyle Maxwell Doherty. Touch is one of the most intimate forms of contact we as humans have with the world around us. It can convey temperature, texture, velocity, emotions, and countless other information, which can be processed to help us which can be processed to help us navigate life. And just as much, it helps us explore our kinesphere. It can help us navigate our implements, and musical choices we make in the practice, rehearsal, and performance settings. So that's what touch is to some of those people. And it's good to think about what touch means to you. Another important question for me is, what is technique? And I would argue that technique is really nothing more than being able to determine what sounds you want to have come from your instrument, and then have the ability to produce those sounds. If you determine that a roll should sound as smooth as glass, then you need to have the technique to play a very smooth roll. If you determine that a 4-note grouping, the second note should be just a hair softer than the other notes, so that perhaps the last 2 notes feel as if they're flowing into the first note of a repeated 4-note grouping, then you need to have the control and technique for fine dynamic manipulation or some other means to achieve that goal of having the second note sound slightly softer than the others. In short, any idea that you have in your mind's ear should be able to come directly from the instrument. That's technique. An example I used to use with my students all the time is, and you can try this at home, it's kind of fun. Say the word or the letter T. T. Now say the letter or the word D. D. And then go back and forth a few times and be aware of where your tongue is, how your tongue is against the front of your teeth, how it sits against your palate. T, D, T, D. And if I don't move my lips, you can't even tell which letter I'm saying. T, D. But they feel completely different. They sound completely different. And unless you're like me and had a speech impediment when you were a kid, nobody ever taught you this. Nobody ever said, take your tongue and curve it this particular way and have it sit this way on the front part of your upper teeth and have this much of your tongue touch the palate. Unless you had trouble as a kid saying those words, nobody ever taught you this. You figured it out. And when I have an idea, when I'm telling you this idea, I have no conscious thought at all about what is happening with my breath, what's happening with my tongue, what's happening with my teeth, my jaw, my lips. I don't think about that. There is no technique involved. I have an idea and I put that idea forward. To me, that's technique. The absence of technique is technique. And then the third important term, along with touch and technique, I think is creativity. And again, I would argue that creativity is really nothing more than the ability to make your own determination about how something should sound. Why do you want to have that second note softer than the others? Using that previous example, how can you push the music forward at this point if you feel it needs to move forward? What is your meaning of a piece of music? And what is your interpretation of a passage or of an entire piece? Taking it to the macro level, what is your interpretation really of your entire career? When we're being at our most creative, we don't really have any conscientious awareness of the act of being creative or trying to be creative. What we're really just doing is thinking. And in terms of being creative in music, we're thinking about music. With those three aspects, touch, technique, and creativity, what is really the relationship between those concepts? And I'm sure there are other concepts that I'm leaving out in this particular discussion. But are these concepts the same? Is touch technique? Is creativity technique? Are they different? How are they different? Are they codependent? Are they interdependent? I think that that's perhaps a very important question to ask about those three aspects. Throughout the last 20 years or so, I've been aware, or I seem to think, that percussionists often live in two different worlds. They live in a world of, as Gilbert mentioned, drumming versus percussionists, or drumming versus keyboards. I don't feel that there's any, I don't feel like there should be any difference between those. But when we hear somebody play a keyboard percussion instrument where they're dealing with pitch, and to some degree they might have concerns about duration, like when playing the vibraphone or sometimes on marimba, nuance seems to be king. The idea of playing with individual expression and individual musicianship is highly rewarded. And you can think about this. In keyboard percussion, there's hundreds of different types of mallets because it seems as if many percussionists are more aware of their sound or of their tone when playing those instruments. You can find different types of mallets that have different shaft material, rattan versus birch versus maple, shaft length, the shaft thickness, the core material, the core shape, especially is important for vibraphonists, the core covering material. Is the core material wrapped with latex or not? Wrapped or unwrapped mallets. The wrap material, is it yarn or is it cord? Is the yarn wool or is it some sort of synthetic? What about the wrap style, the head size or the head weight? Take a look at Steve Weiss music and you're going to find literally hundreds and hundreds of different types of keyboard mallets. In the drumming world, however, playing with speed and tricks is sometimes considered to be extremely important. Playing with perfection is king, and playing with individual musicianship on those instruments is seldom rewarded. With the exception of the drum set world, people tend to want to play the ink more when they play percussion instruments, except for a few really standout performers where there's no denying their artistry and their individuality. Some teachers even talk about this idea of playing the ink. I've been told by a teacher before, and I've heard colleagues say, just play the ink. Just play the ink. That's all you need to do is play the ink. Well, to me, that's no different than saying, just read the words. in a play. You don't need to act, just read the words. The words are on the page, simply read the words. But how do you bring those words to life? As I mentioned talking to Gilbert earlier, music is not the ink that is written on the page. Music has to be heard in order to be music. And so, how do we interpret the spots on the page to become music? Well, I'm ahead on what I was going to plan so that I don't take too long on doing this. But I'll just say briefly that when it comes to trying to teach percussion, I mentioned going to the Steve Weiss page and seeing hundreds of mallets. There are over 1,000, literally 1,000 method books on mallets, snare drum, and drum set. Uh, Literally over 1,000, 252 for mallets, 330 for snare drum, and 406 method books on drum set. And if you include the ones with recordings, there are over 1,000 just on drum set. And teaching this way or learning this way by books is one way to do it, but it's the simple way to do it. We often get stuck with play etude number 1, and then as soon as you finish that, play etude number 2, and as soon as you finish that, play etude number 3, and then when you finish all of the etudes in that book, let's go to this book, the beginning drummer book, and then the intermediate drummer book, and then the advanced drummer book. That's real easy to do, but it's not teaching music, in my humble opinion. There are a few books that seem to take the beginning, intermediate, and advanced methodologies and teach them, experience them through actual music and music compositions. And I think that those are great, but a lot of them aren't incorporated in such a way that they actually teach music. Okay, so when I taught pedagogy at University of Arizona, one of the first things that I would do would be to ask the students, what are important things for students that students need to know? What skills, what knowledge, what abilities should they have when in elementary or in high school or in university level? What's important to teach students? And at the beginning of these, discussions, I would just ask the students. I wouldn't put anything up on the board and let them tell me what they thought was important. And it would start with things like the rudiments, open rolls, closed rolls, paradiddle variations, accents, 2-mallet playing, 4-mallet playing, all the different grips in 4-mallet playing, scales and arpeggios for the marimba, how to tune timpani, cross-sticking, how to play a thumb roll. And as this group of ideas started to increase, at some point it would float over into what is actually teaching music, because none of those things are actually teaching music. Then there would be things like understanding meter, having a solid background in common practice harmonic language. How are you going to interpret Bach or Haydn or Handel or Mozart if you can't identify the cadences and the harmonic structures? Playing in a chamber music setting, how to work with other musicians, how to work with a conductor, how to follow a conductor, picking instruments for tone quality. That is starting to discuss music and teaching about music. So here are some things that I think it's important to teach about music so that you can become a better musician and interpreter of music. First of all, assuming that a musician with great touch is comfortable playing at all types of different levels, whether it's solo work or chamber work or large ensemble work. One of the things that I think is really important is control of timing on a number of different levels. And there are lots of levels of rhythms. There are inner subdivisions the little bitty notes. There are beat divisions, divisions of measures, time signatures, and things like that. Measure divisions. Where is the downbeat? Where are the weaker beats? Hypermeasure organization. 2-bar phrases, 3-bar phrases, 4-bar phrases that sound like an individual idea, more like sentence structure rather than clauses. In the mood is a clause, but when the clauses are put together, they become perhaps a more complex sentence, which would equal hyper measures. Structural divisions. How does the composer and how are you going to convey the larger scale structure? What are in a piece that's perhaps in sonata allegro form, are you going to put more emphasis on the first theme and more emphasis on the development, perhaps, and play back the second theme, maybe relax it more so that it even has more contrast with the first theme? And the overall structure and form of the piece is something that's very important. Another concept which can be used in the small scale and the large scale is the idea that time is a circle. And I'm going to try to share some things. And whoops, I want to share screen. Okay, I want to share a window. We're going to share. We'll share this window first. Okay, I hope you can see this. Gilbert, if not, please let me know. But imagine here that you're traveling clockwise around this circle. And this circle is divided into 8 parts. And let's assume that where it says 1, this could be a single beat. So you would traverse the entire circle in 1 beat. Or it could be a measure. In other words, where the E is might be beat 2 in a measure of 4/4 time. Or maybe this piece has 4 structural divisions. So it can be used on a small scale or the large scale. So as you move around the circle from beat 1 to E to and which would be like 16th notes, there's a lot of space between each one of those lines. So now I'm going to stop sharing that one and share another one. In this particular screen, there are different concentric circles. And as you travel around clockwise the outer circle, you're actually moving faster than if you move down closer to the center of the circle, traverse that on the 4 beats, and you'll actually be moving around the circle slower. Even though you're hitting the same 1E and the 16th note areas at the same time, you're moving more slowly around the circle. This will play out in a minute.
I guess he exited by mistake. Give us a quick second, guys. Trying to get him back on. Give us a quick second, please.
Okay, we got it fixed.
Yes, there you go.
Sorry, I hit leave studio instead of share.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
Okay, so I'll go back to share.
Awesome.
And let's see here. We'll share this one now. Sorry about that. Okay, so if hope you can see this one. If this is 1 and this is E, oh, now we've divided the circle not into 8 parts, but in 16 parts. So between beat 1 and 2, where I have E and is, or would be equivalent to 16th notes. The division of the 16ths would be 30 seconds, and the division of the 30 seconds would be 64ths. Okay, so as you travel around the circle, 1, 2, 3, 4, as you would hit each one of these points, you'd be playing 8 divisions per beat, which would be 64th notes. Is that right? 4, 8, 16. 16 divisions per beat, which would be 64th notes. I'm going to share one more video. Not one more video, one more window. I hope. Let's see. Yeah, this will work. Okay, in this particular image, as you're going around the circle, notice this heavy red line between the downbeat or the beat or the pulse or the measure or whatever you want to talk about, and its first division with your 16th notes. There's a heck of a lot of room there. There's a lot of space that I can move things around in and still play 64th notes. So I'm not sure if you can see my mouse, but I'm pointing to just a little bit after the figure 1. If I would travel around the circle and hit that spot as my beat or as my downbeat, I would be playing what might be considered behind the beat. If I started to move that note further and further to the right, then I would be actually dragging, because each circle, each each travel around the circle would take a little bit longer time. If I would gradually move that to the left, I would be rushing, because each traverse around the circle would be slightly less time. But these differences, especially if you think about something at approximately a quarter note equals anywhere between 90 and 120, this is actually a big hunk of time that I can move things around in if I'm aware of it and want to make that kind of a change. Okay, so I think timing is really important. And you can think about thicker beats and thinner beats as well. The larger the ensemble, the wider the beats, or the wider the attack points. The smaller the ensemble and the tighter the attacks are on the instrument, the finer those notes have to be lined up. So if I'm playing Steve Reich music for pieces of wood, where everybody's playing pieces of wood, they don't have a lot of sustain, the attack points absolutely must be very, very tight. I don't have much ability to move those around if I want to play with the group. But in an orchestra where there might be 80 to 100 or more musicians, that downbeat is pretty wide. None of the string players are going to be playing at the exact same microsecond. The brass players are sitting further back. The woodwind players are in the middle. The percussion is in the back. And since that beat is going to be wider, think about the foot stomps and hand claps on that song. We will rock you. You can tell it's a stadium because it goes. So that particular beat, boom, 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 boom. That's a really big, wide, juicy pulse. So if I want to, I could play in the front of that. And if I'm playing a percussion instrument with a lot of attack, maybe marimba stroke or cymbal crash, that's going to give that note more attention because it's going to happen before most of the rest of the group plays. If I want to kind of hide that note, maybe I'm playing timpani and I want to try to blend with the cellos in a particular passage, I can try to put that note more towards the center so that the attack of my note is maybe a little bit hidden in the note attacks from all the celli playing at the same time. If I want to make it sound perhaps warmer or seem as if that cymbal crash is longer or my timpani tone is bigger, I might play it a little bit to the back of the beat so that the listener hears the ring of that tone being stronger than if I played it right in the middle. If I play it in the middle of the beat, the tone is going to fade out by the time a lot of the instruments fade out. If I play it towards the back, that tone is going to be a little stronger as the instruments fade back. So I have control over that in terms of timing. Okay, we're going to move on to another important factor, and that's listening. And when listening, I mean, this sounds like an overall thing, but when listening, being aware of who, what, where, when, why, and the one that doesn't begin with a W, how. You have to listen to both yourself and to all the other musicians playing with you. Knowing how your part fits within the whole, or knowing how your sound fits within the hall. Do you have a lot of reverberation? Are you playing in a church? You may be playing a piece on marimba for a wedding, let's say, and it's at a church, and there's a lot of reverb in a church. It has high ceilings, lots of stone, et cetera, et cetera. Your practice tempo at home should perhaps, maybe, be faster than your performance tempo at the church. Why? Because if you want to get the sounds to speak more clearly and let the audience hear things more individually rather than smushed or smeared together, you just take the tempo a little slower. Maybe in playing in a small room, you could take the tempo a little faster. Or maybe the room has an audience of younger kids, or maybe the hall that you're playing in, your performance comes after a group that was really super duper high energy. And your piece is the piece that you're going to start with is maybe a little mellow. Well, you could actually try to play that more mellow piece with a little bit more aggressiveness if you wanted to, depending on what you feel the mood of the audience is. So listening to yourself, listening to your space, listening to everybody around you, be they performers or audience members, is also very important. Knowing how sounds work, knowing how rhythms work, knowing how harmony works, knowing how melody and formal structure works. And I'm going to put up one more screen here and give you an actual example of what I'm talking about. And I use this example. Okay. All right. So I use this example because I was actually doing a clinic at a university and had a private session with one of the students who was playing this piece, Raga Number 1 by William Kahn. It's a piece for timpani. And I was almost shocked by how few considerations the performer took, how few liberties the performer took in playing this piece. And so I'm just going to show you some things that I suggested to this student that I would certainly do on this performance and why I would do them and why I suggested it to the student. Okay, first of all, the tuning is G, B flat, C flat, and G. The 2 octaves on the outside drums, the G sounds nice on the 32 and the upper G on the 23 sounds really nice. But the C flat sounds really horrible on the 26-inch drum. So I suggested using 2 29-inch drums so that that C flat would sound better. Or perhaps taking the B flat to a pitch and therefore taking the C flat up a different pitch, or taking all 4 of them up a different pitch. 23 can get an A, so can a 32. And so then if you brought the B flat up to a C and the C flat up to a C sharp, that drum would speak a little bit more clearly. It's only going to affect people who have perfect pitch. Not me, but the intervallic structure would still be the same. Okay, so if we take a look at this particular piece, the very first note is a G mezzo piano with a fermata on it. And then a change in tempo for 1 bar and another fermata. Then an a tempo bar and then another fermata. And then actually the piece gets off to a good start. Ba-da-da, da, ba-da-da, da, ba, at least for 3 measures with a crescendo. But look what happens after that G on the beginning of the second line. There's another set of railroad tracks, which means, space between it and the B flat. The more space you put in there, the more separated those become. Silence is a great way to separate musical ideas. It's like the most popular way. When you go from the first movement to the second movement of a symphony, there is silence in between, unless the piece is continuous. And then we have the introduction of the B flat. This student never actually realized that the whole first line is nothing but a G. And the whole second line and third and fourth and fifth and sixth and seventh and eighth are nothing but the G and the B flat. And if you look down to before measure 45, we have the high G. That's the introduction of the third drum. And for the whole rest of that page, it's just those 3 drums. So perhaps what I want to do as a musician is to let the audience realize that there's a G only on the first section. And then the second section only has the G and the B flat. And then the third section adds the upper G. Now, how can I do that? There can be a lot of ways to do that, but I'll just show a couple of them. So what I'm going to do is take the first G and the first B flat and the first upper G and try to make those as similar as possible, except for the pitch. Hopefully that will let the audience realize, oh, I remember there was a single note at the very first. Here's another single note. Here's another single note. I think I'm starting to understand the structure of the piece now. I might take the a tempo at measure 3 kind of fast and brisk and even and maybe sharper attack to separate it from the second measure. The second measure, it says allegro, but it's really not allegro. There's only 2 notes. The first note and the second note do not emphasize the meter. So there's no way to determine what the meter is at that point. You don't really have an indication of the meter until the middle of the third bar with a quarter note, bum, ba, bum. That's when we start to get an idea of meter. So what I'm going to do to play this, and I'm just going to sing it, is take a time on that mezzo forte first note, take a little bit of time on the allegro, and then punch the a tempo into the G fermata. In fact, I'm going to put a little crescendo on that so that it feels like it's reached some sort of a period of a sentence. So I might play bum, bum, bum. bum, bum, ba, bum, or bum, 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 bum. Have a little bit of a retard as well as the crescendo. In fact, I like that better. Bum, wah, bum, bum, ba, bum. Then in tempo, ba, ba, bum, bum, ba, ba, bum, bum, bum. But I want that to have a period on it too. So I'm going to slow down just a little bit. And to M4, 1 and 2, 3, F1. That's a little too dramatic. And down, 1 and make more out of that crescendo, and maybe not so much of a change of uh, tempo, and then a big space before the B flat. Bum, 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 bum. B flat, G, B flat. Hopefully that will bring back the second measure as well. Now, just as aggressively as I played figure 1, I'm going to go into figure 10. I guess that's measure 5. I'm going to go into measure uh, 10. Do bum ba bum. Bum bum ba ba bum bum ba ba bum bum ba ba bum 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 whack, and then that sforzando whack. You've got dead strokes. You've got SFFZ. We've kind of reached a climax there, and now look what happens. Little pluses. Da 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 da. 1 and 2, 3, 4, and if you look at the little pluses over the notes coming up in measure third line, last bar, and the first bar of the next line. Fourth line measures 2, 3, and 4. Every time you see the pluses, that rhythm happens to be 2/8, quarter, quarter, 2/8. 2/8, quarter, quarter, 2/8. So that's something the ear can grab onto. The composer helps you with that by giving you those notes at forte. The other notes around it are not forte. So I might want to even increase that difference between the forte and the other notes that are not forte so that it stands out even a little bit more to the listener. In fact, I may change not just the dynamic, but I may change my beating spot. Maybe I want to make that a little brighter by coming closer to the edge. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't. It's in the center of the head. My mistake. This is why you take a close look at the score. At the center of the head. So maybe what I'm going to do is not only the center of the head, but I'm going to play dead strokes. Or at the center of the head, but make sure that I'm really in the center of the head and take the other strokes a little bit more to the edge. I was kind of aghast that the student that was playing this for me didn't realize any of this. They were only playing the ink. And I think that that's a huge mistake. These kind of things are how you take the ideas of moving past the ink to the performance, of understanding the composition, feeling like you've got the ability to make changes and make those changes to better define the composition and the ideas that you want to get across to the listener. Let's talk about stress for just a moment, because that's important in terms of dynamic, and not just dynamic, it's important in terms of stress. So when I'm speaking, if I want to stress a word, I can give it a little bit more volume when I'm speaking. That might be a dynamic accent or a dynamic stress. In music, we see the accent marks, we see tenuto markings, we see marcato markings, the ones that kind of look like a down bow. We see other types of markings, and those dynamic markings are notes that are louder than the notes around it. So if I accent that word so, I give that more weight. I want you to pay attention to that note more. Kind of just like the accents, and they're even called accents, on syllables. You don't say syllable unless you're trying to make a joke. You say syllable because it's common to put the stress at the beginning of that word. There are other words that have stresses at the end of the syllable. Or if it's a multi-syllable word like 3 syllables, the accent might be in the middle. There's other kind of stresses. Agogic stress is the musical term for it. And agogic stresses are those that are on notes that are longer than other notes. So I can stress a word in my playing, stress a word in my speech simply by taking a little more time than the other words around it. And if I want to really emphasize something, I just say it slower or give it a little bit more time. That's why you see sometimes greatest period of period all period time. Every one of those words has a stress to it because you tend to read those slower when they have a period after them. Metric stresses are stresses that are related to meter, and meter is simply a repeated stress over time. And once it's set up, it continues to propagate itself. So if we think of ba da 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 dee da da dee da da dee da 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 dee da dee da da dee da da da, that actually has stresses on 2 levels. It has the metric stress because that's the beginning of every downbeat, and downbeats, by definition, are stronger than the other beats of a measure. That's what gives measures its continuity of repeated strong and weak beats. In addition, it's also an agogic stress because that note is the longest of every single measure. So it has kind of a double stress on that particular note. That's the metric stress and the agogic stress. There's also range stress or tessitura, where a note that is higher than other notes around it or a note that's lower than other notes around it will seem to be stressed. Those notes that are outside of the other ranges are stressed. And I'm actually putting another trick on that by making the higher notes a little longer, by making these notes shorter, making that kind of slurred note a little stronger, as well as being higher. But if I made them all the same length, you would still get that impression. There's no way to not feel that as being something that's going to grab your attention. That's a tessitura stress. There's always also grouping stresses. Beginnings of patterns seem to have a stress. They are the beginnings of ideas. The first word of a sentence is actually stressed more times than not, as I'm doing on every single one of these sentences. But the last idea can also be stressed. It depends on what you're trying to say when you say it. Which are the important words? As long as something stops, it has some weight to it, and then an additional stress. There are changes in articulation stresses. There are changes in silence. The longer the space, the more separate events become. And if you're doing a piece that has text, text has a really important idea, a relationship to stress. I know we just hit an hour. Can I go about 5 minutes longer? I didn't hear Gilbert.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So if you think of a great Beatles song, Help, man, there are just so many stresses on that word. That's an important word. It's the title of the song. Help. I need somebody. Help. Not just anybody. Help. You know, I need someone. helping, doing, 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 doing. When I was younger, so much younger than today, I never needed anybody's help in any way. Blah, 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 blah. And that word help is going to be on every time it comes in, it's going to be on a strong beat. There's a joke I used to do. It took me a long time to practice this. It took me a long time to get it down. It's take me out to the ball game, take me out to the crowd, buy me some peanuts and cracker jacks. I don't care if we never get back. Okay, everybody knows that song. But if you change the timing of the words, it's really goofy. Take me out to the ball game, take me out to the crowd, buy me some peanuts and cracker jacks. I don't care if I ever get back for it's root for the home team if we don't win. It's a shame for it's 1, 2, 3 strikes. You're out in the old ball game. It doesn't really work. So there's all of these different kinds of stresses. Man, I could just go on. I perhaps took a little bit too long on some of those aspects, but the last aspect I'd like to talk about is something to help players define what's going on in the music. And it's basically the theory of Gestalt. It's, let me see if I can call image. Oh, and then one more, hang on just a second. Okay, so now I'm going to try to go back here and open this image. Okay, these are some ideas about Gestalt and something that I like to call also the law of good continuity. There's all of these different kinds of things that can help you determine your interpretation. This first one is the law of similarity. All of these spots are exactly equidistant from all of the other spots, but because one is painted red and one is painted kind of blue, we tend to differentiate them. So you might really think of this as an exact idea of that raga number 1, that the time that it's played on the G by itself is red, and then when the B flat comes in, it's the exact same rhythm for a while, and that's blue. As long with the other things that help separate it, helped them to separate, such as on the right side, the law of proximity. That big space in the middle makes 2 different groups instead of 1. The law of good continuity, the curvy line, well, it's not a curvy line, it's a series of dots, but our brain will fill those in and follow those dots as if it were a solid line, or a line that curves, or maybe a musical idea that rises and falls gradually. These kind of thoughts, these kind of ideas can help you in your interpretation. I'm going to stop sharing. And all in all, this whole thing is a little difficult to try to convey in an hours of time. And I'm going to take just 5 more minutes or 4 more minutes and mention 2 things. Okay, one is that I constantly call the contract. What's your contract? What are you being hired to do? What are you trying to do? So if you're playing a solo marimba recital, you have a whole different contract than if you're playing a percussion part in an opera. Yes, you can bring your own individuality and ideas to the percussion part in the opera, You get to pick your cymbals. You get to determine how you want to make your crash. You get to determine whether you want to play before the beat or after the beat, the dynamic of it. What kind of a color do you want to get on the cymbals? Do you want to open them up so that they breathe a little bit more? Or do you want to keep them close together so that the high frequencies are a little bit less, so the high frequencies are more attenuated. They don't escape as much as the low frequencies. So you can make a slightly darker sound. You could make a brighter sound. You could give a slight little swish to the cymbals so that the edges are against each other just a little bit longer to change the character. But you can't dramatically take a retard when the rest of the orchestra is not. You can, if you're playing a solo snare drum piece for a competition, have all the leeway you need and might make instantaneous adjustments in the moment. What if you do something that is absolutely fantastic and the crowd breaks into applause? You want to play through that? No, you want to stop, let them applaud, and then go into the next section of the piece. So what is your contract? What are you allowed to do? What are you not allowed to do? And I'm going to end this section by showing you a video. And this is me playing some castanets. And what I did was the Shostakovich Symphony, I kind of made a reduction of all the things that were going on, all the rhythms. There is no castanet part in this piece. But by trying to play this piece on castanets, it forced me to explore. How was I going to make my dynamic changes more effective? Putting my finger on the top of the castanets, putting my finger on the sides of the castanets so that they don't move together quite so quickly. I'm slowing the energy down on the castanets. I'm flipping these black swamp castanets over because they have one side where it's easier to play redoble rolls, and the other side it's easier to play single notes. But I had to have them on the redoble side when I was playing a lot of fast single notes. So how am I going to get it to avoid the redoble? What am I going to do with my hands and manipulation so that it doesn't give me those multiple notes when they're turned in that particular direction? I played the castanets in this example on my knee. If I play them closer to the tip of my knee, the sound is brighter. If I bring them back more to my thigh, there's more flesh covering the bottom castanet, and the sound becomes a little darker. If I play real quick and with a lot of upstrokes, the sound is brighter as the castanets open and the air allows to escape. If I press down and play almost not dead strokes, but I play more into my leg, I can make the sound a little bit darker. So what I tried to do here was follow the nuance, the texture, the pitch, the subtlety, the changes that were going on in the music around me and imitate that on the castanets. So I'm just going to leave this as an example of how you can even play musically, although I hate that word. We should be playing music all the time on castanets, which might seem like to not be an extremely musical instrument. Here we go. Gilbert, maybe that's a good place to call it a day for today. Oh, I can't hear you.
Yes, sorry. Now you can, right?
Oh, there we go. Oops.
I
There we go.
in just a few sentences that lasted no more than 30 seconds, you gave an entire course on castanet playing. That was like when you were saying that, I was like, oh my gosh, like people need to be taking notes when they see this on the replay. It is, and all the points that you were talking about, sir. When you put that diagram and you can take those examples of expression in your playing, the one that had the dots and the lines, and I'm like,
Oh, uh-huh.
wow, it's and again, sir, I'm seeing the perspective that you're coming from, the approach that you're taking on it, and I'm like, we were talking about the more that we learn percussion, the more
Yeah.
realize that we don't know, and
Yeah.
here you are bringing other elements and teaching us how we can be expressful, and then like, where did he get that from?
Oh.
It's amazing, sir.
Oh, well,
Amazing,
thanks.
and I'm so glad and deeply honored
Ah,
to be able to have you here, sir. It's quite a privilege. Um, to our guests, to our viewers, whether you're live right now or you're gonna catch this on the replay, Norman Weinberg is one of the finest professors, percussion educators in the world,
oh,
and
thank you, Gilbert. You're too kind.
I'm just
The check's in the mail. We talked about what you were going to say and how much it was going to cost me, and
itemized
you,
and all. No, by far, by far. I'm being sincere, and that just shows the type of person that you are, sir. You're humble, and it's beautiful to learn at this level concepts at this level
oh,
from somebody like you, with a humble background, and a humble point of view. It's so easy to intake. You're not talking down to us, you're talking with us. You're having a conversation, and that makes learning
oh,
so pleasurable, so easy. The impressions of the concepts go deeper. I think it's beautiful. It's
oh.
beautiful, and this is your home. This is your home, sir. You are welcome here. uh, and
Well, I again, I very much appreciate you doing this whole Valley Percussion Festival thing is amazing, and I can't thank you enough for inviting me and kind of kicking my ass into helping organize these thoughts a little bit more. Um, yeah, I really appreciate it.
well, sir, the honor is all ours. And Robert Botello, he reached out to me, and he goes, "Man, Gilbert!" The moment he saw the announcement, I guess, because I set the stream announcement throughout the week, and the moment he saw it, he called me and he goes, "Gilbert, I am so glad you have Norman on the show. He's you know
Yeah, Robert's great.
people just experienced it, so nothing that I say is going to express it the way you just did, sir."
I remember Robert from. I haven't seen him or spoken to him for way too many years, but when I was teaching at Del Mar in Corpus Christi, he was around for festivals and for concerts and things like that. And we had several good conversations. And uh, yeah, if you're out there, howdy, it's good to see you again.
Yeah, he's seeing it. He's seeing it.
Good.
He's always here, and he goes back and catches several times the replay of these. Yeah.
Well, good, good.
Well, sir, you have a book out, and
Uh,
and and kind of like to a degree, I think the topic that you discussed today is closely related to your book. Am I correct?
Yeah, thank you for letting me do the plug here.
Absolutely.
Shameless plug time. The book is called Touch, and it's 25 etudes that Shostakovich that we just saw is one of the etudes that's available. And really what it is trying to teach subtlety and nuance by way of imitation. And by that I mean, uh, if you're listening, was one of the points I was really going to get to was listening. But if you're listening to some of the best musicians in the world, that's probably a pretty good way to learn about interpretation, because they didn't get to be the best musicians in the world by accident. And maybe they're drummers, maybe they're percussionists, maybe they're not. But if you're an amazing flute player or an amazing trumpet player, let's use both of those as an example, and you happen to be of the personality where you want to make a lot of money with your art, and you also want a secure lifestyle, what are you going to do for that? Well, you're going to audition for orchestras, because orchestras pay a lot of money, and they're, except for COVID, but
Yeah.
who could foresee that? They're very secure positions for the most part. So I think you can rest assured that the principal flutist of the Berlin Philharmonic, is a pretty good musician. And if you want to learn how to interpret passages, listening to a person of that caliber is probably not a bad idea. Same thing with the principal trumpet with the New York Philharmonic. If you listen to, one of the etudes in the book happens to be the opening to Mahler 5, which has a very famous trumpet part, that solo trumpet that goes ba-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da. It's kind of a funeral march, and this is the opening passage to that. If you want to know how to interpret that, go listen to 10 different orchestras, high-class orchestras, and listen to that opening. And you're going to hear 10 different interpretations. They're all going to be subtly different. So you lock into what those subtle differences are, think about why they did what they did, how they did what they did, and then try to emulate that on our percussion instruments. So there's videos. I did that video on castanets. There's several videos online about those interpretations on snare drum. I did one on tambourine. I did one on triangle. A couple other people did one on tambourine. I have a former student, Trevor Barrera, who's going to be doing, I think, 3 of them on snare drum, maybe some other instruments too. I'm not sure. They haven't been released yet.
Okay.
But if you watch some of those videos, you'll get the concept of the book. And shameless plug, it's available at VAP, like Victor Allen Paul Media. And VAP stands for Video, Audio, Print. So it's vapmedia.com. And then there's a menu thing for Touch. Take a look at it. But it's gotten a lot of good reviews. It's being used by a lot of people. It's definitely not a beginner book, but it certainly goes from intermediate all up. Some of the etudes are very approachable. Some of the etudes are hard. And there is no one way to do it. You can do it on any percussion instrument, and you can interpret these however you want. And it's a pretty cool concept. It's delivered as a PDF, and in the PDF are embedded audio. So, you can play it from your computer screen or your phone, and then in addition to that, when you buy it, you're given a link to a web page. It's a private web page that has all 25 videos where the music scrolls down the screen. So if some of the etudes are 4 or 5 pages long, you don't need to do page turns. You can watch your screen, and the music will scroll as you play it. So it's kind of a cool concept and a different concept.
Yes.
And
Yes.
but like I said at the beginning, there's over 1,000 method books for percussion, and this is just another one. But it's worked for me and for my students.
And it's pretty unique in its approach and also in its format, because I didn't know what you just said. One, PDF, and then you just hit the little link, and you're gonna get the play to hear it and play it. So you can
Right.
be, on your right now with COVID, all of us, every single student, every single music student, every single music teacher, every single musician has some sort of setup where they can, sit down and then watch and be playing. So that's wow. The format, I did not know of that. That's awesome. And
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
then being able
Well,
to
I'll
give that
send
link.
you a coupon for the book.
Oh, thank you,
I'll
thank you,
send you a copy of the
thank you,
book.
thank you. But it's wow. I did not know that part of it. I knew the content, and the content is, world class. But that's what's the word I'm looking here for.
Fun.
Well, fun, yeah. As far as your book is concerned, yes, fun. Which, that's what we want to make our education.
That's why it's called playing music.
Yes. Playing, like, in Spanish, the term is jugar, right? Playing.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
play.
yeah. It's unique, and it's a first in the format.
Yeah, yeah.
The term escapes my mind right now. Um, a pioneer in this format, I guess, and in the content. That's not quite the word I'm looking for, but I think I got the message across.
Yeah.
It's pretty unique. It's pretty unique. Wow. And sir, we would love to have you here more often. We were speaking about different uh, projects that Valley Percussion Festival has, and,
Mm-hmm.
FYI peeps. One of them is that we're looking to kickstart, and these are just ideas, guys, that we are looking to do. Is how does the artist warm up?
Mm-hmm.
In other words, how do different people, like Norman Weinberg, he's going to play a snare etude. How does he warm up? He's going to play snare with an orchestra. How does he warm up? If we're going to have a drum set artist, how does he warm up to go and give a concert?
Mm-hmm.
And that'll shed light on some different things. And uh, we're also looking to have clinicians that recur, right, kind of like carousel like type, but maybe like short segments, longer segments, that are educational, and people like you, sir, have a huge educational fan base, and I'm sure they're going to be like, oh, Norm's going to be here again. I gotta watch that one. And it's just a way of keeping interest, keeping percussion education alive.
Yeah.
And you know one of the reasons, sir, why the we've opted to keep the festival going on through the summer and year round, pretty much from now on, virtually, is because, and I hope our listeners are really, I really hope that I can really get the message across, really get the message across, and touch their minds and their hearts. We all of us, no matter who we are, whether we're a beginner, we're an advanced, or we're a professor or an educator, we all want to get better. And you
Mm.
will always catch us saying, man, I wish I could study with this person. I wish I could learn from this guy. I want to play like this other guy. I want to learn some licks like this person. And, VPF is doing that for you. It's bringing it literally, guys, to your house, to your device. All you have to do is hit play. That's all you have to do. Hit follow so you can be updated, and then hit play whenever it's time. And you're going to get, guys, world class education. Many, many of Norman's students paid high dollar tuition to study with him, and they have become somebody significant in the percussion community worldwide. He just came to your device on your headsets, and all you had to do was hit play. How cool is that? How cool is that? We just had a huge festival, sir, and you mentioned you saw some of the content. You know, Ray Luzier from Korn on your device, speaking to you how to play and get to his level. Steve Gadd gave us a lesson on Gattaments, his new book. How cool is that? And to me, um, sometimes, sir, I hear educators, and it's mainly, it's funny, sir, because I've heard this from educators, and I'm going to go completely against the grain, but I hope I can get it across. I hear so many educators saying, man, kids are tired of the computer and being online and being looking at a computer, and I completely disagree, because what are they doing? Playing video games on social media, staring at a screen, right? And I think that just like in person, we find ways to connect to the student, to connect and leave a print, psychologically, emotionally, and educationally. If we think in those terms as well, virtual education like this can be, of course, it's not the same as live, hands-on, but it can do a serious dent in education. I really think so. And I personally refuse to believe and accept that thought that, you know, virtual, it's old. It's, well, not old, but I mean, it's like people have had enough of it. No, we haven't. What do we do every day? We turn on the TV or we turn on Netflix and we're staring at a screen. It's really up to us to make it, like the mom giving the vegetables to the baby, make a way to make it, digestible and pleasurable. I think that as educators, instead of focusing on they're too tired for that, we should really start thinking of how can I make this carrots, appetizing for my kid, for my student. That's my point of view. And that's one of the things that personally, as far as me is concerned, I'm trying to deliver with Valley Percussion Festival. And having people like you, sir, it just, how what can you say about it? Can you say, you cannot deliver world-class education? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I agree, and I'm going to add something to it in that things are only going to get better, even better than they are now, because I started doing this thing called distant drummers when I was at UA, and I would invite students, I would invite world-class players and educators to actually give a master class to my student during master class time. And we had many, I'll send you a list because it's really pretty surprising how many people we had. We had Evelyn Glennie do a clinic. We had Steve Schick, and these aren't clinics; these were master classes. My students were playing for these people. Bob Becker did one. We had every year we did it in the spring semester, and we had between 8 and 10 per year for about 7 years. So we brought all those people to campus. But my point is, when we first started doing this, which is, I've been retired 3 years, so it's been at least 10, maybe more years ago, when we first started doing this, it was pretty crappy. The audio was spotty. It was highly condensed. The video was always going out. And this was jacked in through internet also. Right now I'm doing this, and I'm guessing you are too, wirelessly through Wi-Fi. But this was back when we had to have a separate camera, and we had, because the computers didn't come with cameras. We had separate cameras, we had a separate mixer, we had 2 microphones, one for the performer, one for the audience if they had questions. And over the course of these years, it's just been getting better video, better audio, more secure and stable connections, um, fewer dropouts and
Yes.
screw ups. So think of where this kind of a concept that the Valley Percussion Festival is doing now. Where will this be in 5 years or in 10 years? I think it's going to be significantly, the difference between now and 10 years ago will be 2 to 3 times that difference between now and 10 years into the future.
Yes. Yes, 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 and it's up to us to capitalize on it, sir. Because, you know, we tended to be passionate about what we do, and I'm talking about, musicians in general, whether it's a wind instrument, a string instrument, percussion, singing. We tend to be passionate
But
about.
drummers even more so than other musicians. I mean, if you ever attend a PASIC, it's gigantic, and everybody's helping everybody else. There's no
Yes,
ego. Well, there's a few egos involved, but generally there's no egos involved. Everybody's out to help everybody else. I went to the double reed convention. Boy, was that boring. I've been to the International Trumpet Guild convention. Man, they're just a bunch of egomaniacs. But the percussion world is
we're a
very
special
hip.
breed. We're a
Yeah,
special breed.
yeah, very hip.
Yes, very hip, and like you said, we're always trying to learn, and we're always trying to share.
Yeah,
We're always trying to share. And look, check this out. Try this. And it's really just a passing of information, because we get it from one person, and then like, I know this. Try this out.
yeah,
And we learn
exactly.
something from this guy, and like, dude, check this out. It's yeah, it's beautiful. It's
It's like
beautiful.
when I was in high school, and you were the first person on your block to get the new Beatles record, or I was the first person to have a James Taylor record, and then you go around and you show that to everybody, and then
Yeah.
they go out and buy it. I mean, I wasn't the first person in the nation, but I was the first person in my little clique of
Yes.
buddies.
Your circle.
And yeah, everybody would just turn everybody else on to, oh man, look what I just found. This is so cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Well, sir, we could go on and on and on and on, but we definitely need to have you back.
Oh, I'd
Um,
love to come back.
and do all sorts of stuff. From VPF shorts to another summer series episode to and there's more stuff, again, people, that we're doing, we're thinking of bringing. So make sure that you follow our pages on Instagram and Facebook, Valley Percussion Festival, and the G Drums, GDRUMZ, G Drums. You see it on the screen. That's my nickname, that actually wasn't my nickname, but became a nickname to a friend of mine that started to call me G Drums. Um, the G Drums YouTube channel, and
Oh,
that's the official channel for Valley Percussion Festival. And so your social, sir, where we could follow and get in touch with you.
I'm on Facebook. My email is, you can send things to Norman at vapmedia.com. And I don't do, oh, I'm also on Instagram. I think Instagram, I'm vapmedia.com. I need to get more on Instagram. My daughter's trying to get me to become more involved in that. I don't do LinkedIn. What other stuff is out there? Pretty much I'm on Facebook a lot, and people can email me.
You said Norman at vapmedia.com, sir.
Mm-hmm. And I answer all my emails.
There it is.
That's it. Oh, yeah, cool. Yeah, that'll work. Well, thanks again so much.
You have a comment,
Oh,
Kimberly.
hi, Kimberly. Yeah, my drum notation book. Thank you so much. That was my doctoral dissertation. The drum notation book it was published by PAS. It was adopted by PAS, and the notational
Yes.
system is most, not all, but most major publishers have adopted it. PAS endorsed it. Finale uses it. Sibelius uses it. Dorico uses it. Modern Drummer uses it with one exception. Drum Magazine uses it. Hal Leonard uses it. A bunch of publishers use it.
Oh,
But it was
wow.
It was my doctoral dissertation. I've been a notation nerd uh, since about 1974. I learned how to ink out with pen, and I used to turn in all my homework. This is such a jerk. But I used my music theory assignments. I used to ink them out and rule everything, and it looked like published material. So I've been a notation nerd for a long time,
Oh wow.
and yeah, I dig that. And if you think about it, when I mentioned that the ink on the paper is not the music, it's the symbolic interpretation of what the music should sound like. It's really important.
Yes.
With unclear notation, it just makes the okay. I'm going off onto a whole different topic. Maybe we do a notation thing in the future.
That is going to be our next topic, sir.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah,
Now,
I'm kind of
now we have a plan,
notation
and
freak.
we are definitely forced to bring you back, and that's beautiful. So, guys, ladies and gentlemen, hope you enjoyed our segment today with Mr. Norman Weinberg. Is it Doctor?
Yeah,
Dr. Norman Weinberg. Okay.
but you
Dr.
can call me Norm.
Norm or Your
Your
Highness.
Highness.
Yeah, that would be most appropriate. That would be most appropriate. Dr. Norman Weinberg, amazing educator. Reach out to him. He has books going that he offers, and we will be seeing him here more again. Without any more chit chat, guys.
Thank you very much.
See you
Thanks
next
all
week.
for watching. Bye-bye.